Just kind of a little recap. I'd made up my mind a year ago, January, to do away with that big Chevrolet motor, and it had just proved to be too much hassle. And I figured there had to be an easier way, so I started looking at a Chevy, or a Chrysler, a Hemi. And I did a lot of phone calls and in January and early February, and after a lot of recommendations, I got a hold of Jerry Darian that we talked about before. And our goal at the time was to make Speed Week 2012. Seemed like a reasonable deal. Well, as it turned out, it wasn't reasonable, and it really wasn't feasible. This thing's kind of a one-of, even though the block, the heads, the crank, it's all pretty much typical A-fuel NHRA stuff. The manifold had to be purpose-built to fit our body height. The pan Moroso did a great job building a special pan for it. A lot of things just entered into it. And one thing led to another, and pretty soon it was obvious we weren't going to make August. And then all of a sudden, Cook's Meat in September went away, and everything just kept progressing, but it was this piece and that piece down the road. And 2 weeks ago, Jerry called me on a Monday, and he said, can you be in LA on Wednesday? And I said, wow, I can. I don't know about all my crew, but anyway, it all worked out. And we'd made arrangements to originally run the engine on Brad Anderson BAE dyno, and for whatever reason that fell through. And it's really hard to find a dyno to handle an engine that makes this much horsepower. Don Ferguson, good friend of ours, offered his dyno, and after he checked with Superflow, they told him, don't even think about putting that animal on your dyno. It won't hold it. And so Don looked around Southern California area, and he found a shop in Anaheim called Dr. J's Engineering. They had a dyno that would do the job. So we get into the shop. Jerry introduces us to the owner and everything, and we go back to the dyno room, look through the window, and I'm going, there it was, a year in the making, and obviously we'd had photographs and a lot of communication, but there it was, live living color. It was like, remember when my wife had our first baby? It was pretty exciting. The interesting part, and this is a truism, had Jerry built the engine, shipped it to us, we wouldn't have known what to do with it. We spent 3 days down there on the dyno, and it was probably the best 3 days of my life I ever spent, education-wise. We took all of our race pack computer equipment, hooked it up to the dyno. We weren't making the horsepower we needed it with 50%. So Jerry says, well, let's go to 75%. So we upped the percentage, and now the needles on the dyno are coming up where you would want them, and still wasn't quite there. And on the third day, he says, you want to go to 85? And I says, no way. Let's go to 90. So we put 90% in it. And we had only been running the engine up to 5,500 RPM. And we wanted to go to 6,000, even though we're going to turn at 65 in the races. But the guy that owns the dyno, Bryce, really a nice guy, he says, yeah, we can go to 6. And we get to 5,700 RPM. And the dyno starts puking water out every pore. So we were at the max horsepower the dyno would accept. It just wasn't going to do anymore. We never did get to turn at 6,000, but It was making big time horsepower and just huge torque. So I'm more than happy with the numbers we've seen. What I talked about a year ago on our last interview, there was a lot of optimism and we felt really confident. I have to tell you right now, we're more optimistic than I was even a year ago. We've moved, we used to call it Project 425. It's now called Project 450. I think, we know the car will run 412 and it went there easy. 425 will get that world record. But I really believe with this engine combination and the car, it's capable of 450. It won't be the first time out, but that's our goal, 450. And we'll never compete with Poteet and Maine. They got too much horsepower. That Kenny Duttweiler is just too smart a guy. Turbochargers as big as an elephant. You know, we're not in that class, but I think we can run 450, and who knows, we might be able to give them a little run for their money for top time of the meet at Speed Week this year. Our goal, hopefully, we still have a lot of work to do here in the shop. Now that we have the engine, we can finalize a lot of the work we've been doing for the last year. But hopefully, I would like to take the car to El Mirage in May. It's a 2-day event. It's worth driving down there for. If the car's ready, we'll go to El Mirage and just blow it down there a couple of times, make sure we don't have clutch issues or drive line, whatever. I don't anticipate we will, but if we do, I'd like to know before August. And if El Mirage don't work out, then we'll be at Speed Week ready to rock and roll. And the crew, yeah, they're all pumped up. Everybody's happy. All last year, the guys were happy. Now they're real happy. The guys that went to California with us are just, to hear that thing on the dyno, I'll be honest with you, when it got to 5,500 RPM, standing behind that wall, I was tempted to run. I mean, it just makes a lot of thunder, and I was looking at the torque meter on the dyno and the horsepower, and they were just going up together, and I kept thinking, wow, I've never seen an engine do that. At idle, it makes more torque than horsepower, and as it starts going up, it's like they're on the same gauge. Then the horsepower does overtake the torque, but the torque's extremely high. And I really believe that's what will carry this thing down at the 5 and the 6 mile. We've never had that kind of horsepower and torque, so the torque, I think, will be what gets us through the deal. So we're looking forward to it. I think last year's frustration, not racing, car never went out of the shop. It was pretty frustrating. Missed the whole year, but I think we're going to make up for it in 2013. And there you go.